Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, pick a guy that you like. Or sometimes you can pick a lady. You have to, if you want to pick a lady, I hope you like that one lady because there aren't
Mhm.
really other ladies.
So far.
There are a lot of lady companions.
There's a Yeah, they did a lady as a joke one time. And then they reference and they're like, oh, well, there's also this other lady. It was like, I want to watch episodes with this lady. Be like, sorry, you can't. Just
Yeah.
this other lady though.
Yeah.
Um, but otherwise it's just pick a guy and sometimes the guy is a lady and just go forth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense to me.
yeah,
And
dude looks like a lady. Sorry. Um,
I think that part of loving something is knowing what its flaws are. And if you're going to recommend it to someone, being like, hey, if you just do this, you're going to have a bad time.
mhm.
And I think that's very appropriate for celebrating something, is acknowledging its flaws.
Yeah, and like
Absolutely.
I've said it many times on the show, I am an anime person, so
Mm-hmm.
I am like I like to reside in the filth
Yeah. Yeah.
of like I want to be in the garbage can, and they're like, oh, this is like the things that the people that fandom tends not to like is exactly the ones that I go for. Like the TV movie is not popular, and I think those people are wrong. And I'm talking about it now because we will not be able to talk about it on this podcast for like 57 years because it takes place in the 90s.
There is one clip of it that's like not too far off. It's like not soon, but it's we're already more than halfway to it.
Oh.
Okay, speaking of unpopular Doctor Who fan takes, my most well, no, my most controversial one is Stitches in Time is the correct way to watch Doctor Who. But among my other hot takes, that is not.
I do want to point out that in this current podcast and with the people on here, I think that you have 100% agreement in that Stitches in Time is the correct way. So I
Vocal
actually
agreement.
my
Mhm.
understanding of the Doctor Who fandom, which is this podcast right now, that's a very popular opinion that Stitches in Time is the correct order.
Yeah.
It's really the
You're
only
right.
opinion that people are having, right?
Yeah, well, except for your wife.
I sampled 100% of the Doctor Who fandom that is on this podcast right now,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone agrees Stitches in Time is the correct way.
We should really start getting testimonials from all our guests. Just like. But anyway, and I talked about this in a recent episode that we had. But when we were talking to Sarah Kaplan, I really like Clara as a companion, and that's a very unpopular opinion. But I feel like this episode, not the bits that we're watching, but like the Caretaker overall, is
Mm-hmm.
a really great example of why I like her so much, because it shows that she is very flawed, and I find that relatable because I am extremely flawed. But also, it's like she's kind of the first companion who makes like a real effort to like prioritize her regular home life. And she's not just like
Mhm.
going off for months at a time with the doctor. Like, she's like, no, I actually love my job and I want to keep doing it, and we can have adventures on the side.
Well, I will point out, Tegan would have loved to go back to her job, but someone didn't let her.
That is true. Yeah, I and look,
This is really like the doctor kind of learned after Tegan of like, oh, well, maybe I should let them go home sometimes, and really paid for that.
yeah, I mean, it took him a while to learn that lesson. But yeah, I'm just imagining like a world in which the Peter Davison era was just like, okay, Nyssa and Tegan and Adric all traveling on the TARDIS, but like sometimes Tegan just goes home to be a flight attendant for a couple weeks.
It's all about that work, life, Time Lord companioning balance that you've got to strike.
It's true.
So important.
Also, the clips that we're watching in this episode in the BBC edit are intercut with her like arriving immediately from the doctor. It's very much like a work-life balance episode of like, okay, we escaped from the sand piranhas, and now I am much more tan than I was when I saw my boyfriend 6 hours ago or whatever it was. So, like, it's about that struggle, and I like that she has that struggle because if the companion is the audience insert character, I feel like I'm not going to give 100% of my time to any man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just fair and correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Banking off that, because and Josh, you've said that your familiarity with Doctor Who is mostly from Tumblr, so you might be aware that nobody watched Capaldi and everyone hates Clara.
Yeah, the one that nobody watched is the one with the companion that nobody liked. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of it, because Clara started with Matt Smith, the previous Doctor, and Clara, for me, like, I started off really disliking her, and this is probably around the time, like, you mentioning that in terms of the episodes, like, I have a hard time remembering, like, the specifics of individual episodes, but I can usually remember the arcs that are going on.
Yeah,
and
this is like halfway through Capaldi's first season.
Yeah. So. And part of the issue with Clara is she was very much kind of presented as like she is a plot contrivance, and the entire like we're just having to have an arc of raced around this mysterious lady. And it was a lot of like Moffat's kind of hang-ups were in that. And the thing that I think helped Clara as a character was her getting more of a life outside of the Doctor and kind of building that up, and also seeing where that goes, and kind of I feel weird to be like, oh, without spoiling, but also this is a podcast where we've never worried about spoiling anything.
Yeah,
but
sure.
The life that she is working hard to maintain getting completely upended, and how that kind of breaks her and leads her to making a lot of toxic choices is something that I thought was like a really interesting thing to see. And I also really like Clara, but I started off very much not liking her, and it wasn't until like I put it at the point of, for a while, like, Moffat always struggles to write a character that he's attracted to, and then he kind of stopped being attracted to her, and then he could write her properly.
Yeah.
Because when he's writing a character that is supposed to be like sexy and cute, they are not a developed person. It's not necessarily a failure of writing, like he literally can't. I think that it is a problem of when he's trying to write something sexy and cute, it can often backfire and become very annoying and kind of cloying and a little like forceful in a way that I'm not necessarily into. And so when like kind of, I don't want to call it like backfilling a character, but in a way it was kind of like, oh no, she has a full life. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, if I may be snarky for a moment, I don't know if that's allowed on this podcast, but hearing that she A, sometimes has flaws, and B, wants to be her own person outside of being defined by the main character, I can see now why Tumblr didn't like her and doesn't like her. That tracks with what I know.
I honestly, because I don't think most of Tumblr did not see at this point. By
Yeah.
this point in the show, Tumblr was out.
Mm-hmm.
Like this had already, like the Super
Yeah.
Hulock
They'd
was
only
dead at
seen the
this
worst
point.
of Clara.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I only saw it because, like, when Ben and I were initially dating, they heard that I stopped watching at Capaldi's first episode. And they're like, no, you got to get back to it. You got to watch it. And this is how you know that I was really into Ben at the time, is that I agreed to it. And Capaldi's first season is quite bad. It turns around. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy it later on, but those first batch of episodes are painful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was feeling vindicated, but then I'm also sad because like the stuff that comes later was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and most people have not seen that.
Yeah.
So, as someone who hasn't seen this, would you say that the later stuff is only good because you go through the earlier stuff, or is it just they had to get through a lot of writing dreck that they had to work out for themselves, and then they managed to find the good things to write?
No, yes and no. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
not entirely sure. I would admittedly need to go back and like do a rewatch to kind of have like watch those episodes knowing that it's going to get good later, as opposed to when I was watching it initially and it was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh God, I'm suffering, but I'm really into this person, so I'm gonna keep on like politely watching this.
Yeah.
Um, because I also, my controversial take about Doctor Who, there is an episode that is considered the worst episode. It is like a moon. The moon is having a baby, and it's a
Mhm.
pro-life episode about the like we have to abort the moon. That is
It's a weird
swear
one.
to God, that is an episode. Like there is an entire YouTube video by Sarah Zed about how bad this episode is.
I'm pretty
And
sure
I mean,
also that's the episode that immediately comes after this episode in the BBC order.
yeah,
Thank goodness.
it is the worst episode,
Mm-hmm.
except for the last 10 minutes. In the last 10 minutes of it, because they do the whole abortion thing, and the doctor is like, aha, I put you in this situation because I wanted you to choose, because I'm pro-choice actually.
Mm-hmm.
And Clara was like, what the fuck? I thought that, like, why did you put this on me? Why did you make this a silly little game? This wasn't a silly little game. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing. And it made me so angry because that bit, like, it goes back and it kind of like, well, now that episode makes entire sense to me. And like, I am a defender of that episode, if only because the last 10 minutes work. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you had an entire season that was bad, so I can't trust you to the end of that last 10 minutes. And now I don't
Mm,
know, was that episode intentionally bad to justify those last 10 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Yeah.
Like, if
Well,
it is, it still failed because it's like, well, you have to. I'm not at a point where I can trust you to be doing good. And but also I am exactly where Clara is of like, you've been fucking around with me this entire you could have been writing good stuff this whole time.
well, by the time we get to that episode, which will be in several years, I think we'll probably have enough clout to get Stephen Moffat on and ask him all of these questions directly and demand
Yeah.
answers.
And it'll be very easy to just say, so were you intentionally being a sucky writer, or...
I mean, he's gonna be at Gallifrey 1, and the delightful thing about Gallifrey is that you can really go shoulder to shoulder with people. Like I got to talk with Chris Chibnall briefly, and like he was just hanging out at karaoke. Um, so I don't. It's my bravery of like, hey, were you intentionally fucking with me during the egg episode?
Mm-hmm. I did want to talk about with the sand piranhas.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if the sort of devices that they're being held by were already there and they just had two of them set up, or if they dropped them in there with them. But it was very nice of whoever has them captured placing them so close together so they can have this conversation.
That's a good point. I sort of
Like we see
I want to know what they did
on a
wrong.
wide shot, there's a skeleton, but other than that, we don't have a lot of context clues.
Right.
Josh, I really like that your thoughts coming into this podcast were that's not a good way to set up prisoners. Like, I just want to hear your thoughts on like, oh, it should be a panopticon setup. You gotta watch them and you gotta keep them separated. That's what the Offspring were singing about.
Yeah. And if we don't listen to the Offspring, who will we listen to?
Exactly.
I feel like maybe this is actually they wanted to take a break. And so they got caught by the most lenient of jailers that they could find. And so they did that deliberately by coming here.
They're just real tired of running.
Yeah.
Makes a lot.
Do you think the captors noticed that and they're like, we found some really soft sand for them.
Mm-hmm.
We put out a little beach read. We're just trying to give them a vacation.
Yeah. Fun in the sun.
Yeah. And I think after this we cut over to the guards and they're just like hanging out, and all of a sudden one of them looks at the jacket and is like, "Oh shoot, their vibro cutters were in there. We got to give that to them."
That's negligence on our part. Oh no.
Goodness.
Beans.
We didn't mean to make this impossible.
The big finish audio is the guards having to like establish this elaborate plan of like, well, how do we sneak over and just kind of put it next? I'm like, oh, it just fell out of your pockets over here, and it's so close, and it's like just out of reach. And then Clara's like, I can't get it, and they just like shove it a little further.
One of the guards is like, okay, wait, what if we give it to one of the trained sand piranhas and they can like take it up to them, and it'll be like kind of a that dog in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie situation.
Mm-hmm. The last time we saw Peter Capaldi running, he was running in black and white, right? I'm glad he figured out how to run in color this time.
Yeah, good for him. He got some kind of color blindness correction surgery.
But lost the narrator. So
Right. That's why they got captured. If they'd had a narrator that to like explain their way out of the predicament, then that would have been key. But no such luck.
Or at least that would have been vibro cutters.
True.
Because if you don't have a key, next best thing.
That's what we've always said on this podcast. If you don't have a key, next best thing is the vibro cutters. And now, after 30 some odd episodes of listening to us say that popular catchphrase of ours, you finally have context as to what it means. Yay.
You're welcome.
Josh, where can people find you on the internet?
The internet, I've heard of that one. You can find me at joshcloss.com, JOSHCLOSS. You can find my comics and ways to buy my novel and other things that also don't cost money there. The comics are free. Other writing there is free. And links to my Twitch, twitch.tv/5ironfanatic, FIVE, Iron Fanatic, where I do the aforementioned Final Fantasy D12 and other various video game streams. And also you can find me on Instagram at 5ironfanatic, same spelling, where I don't post much at the moment, but maybe someday.
Is one of these places the place where we can also find your first most ambitious Final Fantasy adjacent project that you've undertaken to date?
That would be Tumblr, level99challenge.tumblr.com.
Okay.
Is a project where I get to level 99 in Final Fantasy VII before defeating the first boss.
That sounds incredible, and
This
just
is why
about
I have not
as
had
maddening
to
as
ask you.
Stitches in Time.
Yeah, this is why I have not had to ask you, why did you start Stitches in Time? I understand.
This is why
Yeah.
I love when we invite trans people to this podcast, is you all have an insane adventure.
Just gotta keep it in the back pocket.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode, or possibly these episodes. I'll probably do what I said and split it up right in the middle, because I think that would be funny. And next week, we're going to be talking about Time Crash, the exciting reuniting of our two favorite doctors.
This is the new Pete podcast. We got Peter Davidson. We got Peter Capaldi. We're back to Peter Davidson. It's all Pete all the time.
Mm-hmm.
As we always say, if you don't think Pete's neat, you got to beat feet and get out of here.
Mm-hmm. And look, if you don't have a key, a vibro cutter will do. Thanks for listening to Stitches in Time. Music by Becca, the Matrix Archivist. Art by Mandy Oquendo. Logo by Ben Paddon. Find us on the web at www.stitchesintie.me. Stitches in Time, but with a dot in the middle of the word time.
Oh, Becca,
Beautifully
you're on
done.
like a severe delay.
I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, baby.
Wahoo!
It's going to be a
Yes.
fun time.
Mandy, are you ready with your thing?
I am trying to come up with my thing. I hope I will have one by the time you finish talking.
Great. Is that what's always happening?
Sometimes I come in and I like really got one, and this is not one of those times.
Great.
How much further?
Target's got to be right at this corner.
And also joining us is the lovely Josh. Josh? I'm going to take that again. Also, Josh, if you need to take anything again, or if you need to, this will be edited. So if you make any like horribly racist jokes, I will cut them out.
It goes on Becca's special file.
I hate soldiers. Don't you hate soldiers?
Yeah. So
I have to pause my cat, who has found a Matryoshka Santa Claus from her packing things and is fighting it right now.
Incredible.
I'm guessing this is not a cat-specific, cat-friendly situation.
No, absolutely not.
How many Santas deep does it go, I wonder?
As many Santas as the real Santa goes deep.
Whoa.
Yeah.
True to life. This is great audio.
This is great audio. I also love because
Becca lied. She doesn't edit this at all in any way. Oh, and here's the last Santa.
Oh, hello, little Santa.
Also, because of the way that Zoom records video, I can't figure out how to give it to me all three screens at once. So it does just cut back and forth between whoever is speaking. And I was paying attention to where the green box was, and it was rarely on Mandy when she was showing it to the camera.
Thank goodness.
I'll know next time that I have to share something on screen. I'll also just scream the entire time.
Perfect.
Just to make sure Zoom knows to focus.
Hey, if you're listening to just the audio of the podcast, check out the YouTube page so you can see basically as much as you saw when you were just listening. It's great.
Yeah.
Why have you got two jackets? Is one of them faulty?
Look, I don't have the vibro cutters. If I had the vibro cutters, I wouldn't be able to pass you the vibro cutters.
Yep. I have on the wall of my bedroom a photo from Gallifrey 1 with Colin Baker and Jodie Whittaker, who are the only two doctors to have ever regenerated from an actor named Peter, which is the only way I could link those two.
Mm-hmm.